Hello everyone and welcome back to Oh Yum. I have another spectacular recipe. By now you've figured out I really like lemon desserts, and lemon for the holidays I think is perfect, especially when you want to make a lemon meringue Yule log. I am making a Yule log or bûche de Noël, but I'm using all the flavors and textures of lemon meringue pie. I'm using cake instead of pie dough, and we're rolling that up with a delicious, delectable lemon curd, topping it with meringue. So I'm gonna get right to it and make this beautiful sponge cake. Now this is a two-step sponge cake. So I have separated my 4 eggs, and I've got my 4 yolks going into my bowl with a little bit of sugar, and as usual, the full recipe is right below, so you can bake along with me. I am doing this recipe full in real time. The only time you see a change is for the sake of time. Something either cooling, setting, or coming out of the oven. So you can just hit pause on the video and wait until your delicious cake comes out of the oven. So I'm working in my lemon flavor into this sponge because I'm going to heat up my egg yolks and sugar with some lemon zest here. So we're layering the lemon flavor in. You can't do that with a lemon meringue pie. You usually don't add lemon zest to a pie dough, do you? There we go. And I'll give this a little whisk. And I have a pot of simmering water. It's got about 1 inch of water, just at a low simmer. And so you want to take your whisk over and give this a good whisk. It's going to melt the sugar, thicken the egg yolks a little bit. It's not going to fluff them up like you're making a sabayon, or if you've ever made tiramisu and you add spirits or another liquid, it's got more room to move. So we're looking for, right now, you can see the yolks are a rich yellow egg color. What I want you to do is keep whisking this steadily, but not too vigorously, until they turn a beautiful buttery yellow. That's the color we're looking for. So this usually takes, if you've got a nice boil on your water, I think I'll turn that up a little bit, usually takes about 3 to 4 minutes. In the meantime, I've preheated my oven to 375, and I've lined a 10 by 15 inch jelly roll pan. So that's a baking tray that's got a lip to it. Switch sides here. There's no need to pull out the electric beaters for this step because you don't have to whip that vigorously. Just keep the egg and sugar moving. A final temperature is not critical here because the cake, once assembled, goes into the oven to finish its baking, where you'll see when I make the Swiss meringue to cover the bûche de Noël that you want to hit a specific temperature with those egg whites because that's the only opportunity they have to cook. But I can smell that lemon. You know I love lemon. There we go, it's starting to thicken up. I feel like I should switch on this side. Which side has the better light? Let me know. I have a little more room to work this way. There we go, it's lightening up in color and consistency. I'm about 30 seconds away from being done. So if you're baking along with me, please, I welcome you to use these visual cues so you know when you should start and when you should stop. All right, now I'm gonna pull this off the heat, just dry the bottom of my bowl. I think that's a habit I have from working with chocolate. And you can see the mixture, while not voluminous, has definitely doubled in volume, and you've got a much paler color. And I could tell it was time to stop because over the heat, I could see it was pulling on the bottom, and I didn't want to overcook those eggs anymore. Now, at this point, you can set this aside to let it cool, and it's time to pull out your stand mixer or electric beaters because I want you to whip the 4 egg whites that you saved from the 4 yolks. And while they're whipping, and this is for the sponge, not the meringue, by the way, I've got my reserved granulated sugar, and I have 2 tablespoons of icing sugar. I just find it gives, for this sponge cake recipe, it gives the cake good volume, but also a fine bubble structure at the same time. So I'm gonna whip my egg whites until they're frothy, then add the sugar and continue whipping until I have a medium peak. Slowing down the mixer as I add the sugar, only because the icing sugar is in there, and I don't want it to kick up a snowstorm. All right, I'm checking my medium peak, and I've got it. No, I'd say that's a soft peak. It's a little too soft, so I'll give it another 30 seconds, or not even. You'll see in most sponge cake recipes that call for whipped whites, there we go. I've got a curve to my whites, but still some movement, and that's what you want. You want movement, not a stiff peak that doesn't go anywhere when you're folding your meringue into your sponge cake, because, quite simply, if your whites are a bit beaten to a stiff peak, they have nowhere else to move, and when you bake your cake, it may lift, but then collapse because you overstretch those whipped egg whites. So now what I'll do is fold in about 2/3 of the whites, right off the top. My base mixture is very light. It's just the egg yolks and the sugar. And I think I'll use my whisk to do that, just so I don't break up the meringue, but I'll use a spatula when I start folding in the flour. If I added the flour to that small volume of egg yolks, I'd end up with too tight of a batter and the whites would just collapse under the weight of it. So now that I have that folded in, let me just get my spatula out of the way. I can sift in my cake and pastry flour. And I do call for cake and pastry flour in this recipe because I want a tender, and what's key with a jelly roll cake is a flexible sponge. So it can roll, hold its shape, and not crack when I do that. Cake and pastry flour always requires sifting. Look at all those lumps in there. But you can push them through. Because I weighed my flour beforehand. There we go. And now back to the spatula, and I'll fold this in. And even though this sponge cake is light and fluffy and seems delicate, it's not fragile. So you can work quite speedily as you're folding your flour in. More than you, time is the enemy when it comes to a sponge cake. Speaking of, did you know I have one in the oven right now, and it is about ready to come out of the oven. I can see the timer is almost set. I'm gonna fold in my remaining whites. So this is the remaining 1/3 of the whites. Yep, there's my timer. I'm just gonna take a peek at my cake. Oh, it does need another minute, so let me just do that. That's perfect. It's counting down. That buys me a minute to finish folding in my cake, or folding in my meringue into my cake batter. And it's okay to go a little more vigorously, even in this final stage. You really want to make sure you're letting that cake and pastry flours find it as it is to dissolve in the batter. So it's nice and smooth, but still fluffy. And here is my jelly roll pan. So it's a 10 by 15 inch. In goes the batter. And then take a moment with an offset spatula to spread it. And when I'm spreading cake batter into a sheet pan like this, I go to the edges first, basically to lock the batter in place. And I've just lined, there's my timer again, let me check on that cake. It can handle another 30 seconds. Don't let me forget about it. So, I was talking about locking the batter in the corners. That way it becomes easier to spread and level. So just like that, I've got batter in every corner. So now it's just a lot smoother to move the batter to level it off in the pan. As level as you can manage. But don't worry if you've got a few little bumps. If you spend 5 minutes trying to achieve perfection, well, you're actually breaking down the beautiful bubble structure of the cake batter. So I think I'm in good shape here. And I'm ready to swap out my cakes. Oh, look at that. Gorgeous. So just a bare light brown color. Got a little batter on my towel there. Let me spread this one out again. There we go. I'll pop this in the oven. And now, the reason I wanted to get a cake batter timed so it's coming out now is you want to work with it while it's hot. So I popped this batter right in the oven right before I saw you, quickly washed my bowls, and now we're ready to, literally ready to roll. So you want to take a clean tea towel and a spatula, and remember that the pan is hot, and just a spatula or even a butter knife works. Carefully run along the inside of the pan, loosening the cake. And just to let you know, you do have about a 5-minute window when the cake comes out of the oven. During that time, the cake is still hot enough to work with, so even if you can't get to it immediately out of the oven, you've got 5 minutes. 10, then it starts cooling and holding its shape. I have to say, I have really enjoyed your comments during our bake-along sessions when I do the live chat, when we premiere these recipes. So please, I welcome both in the comments and you joining me for the premiere of each of these recipes. All right, I just dusted the top of the cake with icing sugar, not flour, because this isn't going back in the oven again. And now I'm going to take my tea towel, and you do want to be careful because the cake is hot at this point. Flip, and remove your cake pan. Just set it off to the side here. Peel away your parchment paper. I love being able to show this because then you believe me, this cake really works, and the parchment peels away easily. And while it's still warm, you tuck one end of your tea towel in, and when you're rolling your jelly roll sponge, that inside roll is tighter than the outside. So to avoid cracking, but this is a flexible dough, I lift up and then curl. And you leave the tea towel in place so that when you unroll it, it won't stick. So at this point, you can let your cake, you need to let your cake cool, and it takes about half an hour to an hour to cool completely before you unroll it and fill it. If you want, you can bake this a day ahead and just wrap it, tea towel and all, keep it from drying out and fill it the next day if you wish. Now, of course, I've prepared one, so I have one ready. And I made this just about an hour ago. So let me unroll it so you can see how it really holds that curve. So be very delicate with it when you're unrolling it. There we go. And that was, of course, where I started. So this has a bigger curve to it than the end part. Now, if you join me for my lemon curd video with the full recipe, you'll see how easy it is to make a lemon curd. I don't even use a bain-marie. I do it stovetop. And by doing that, I have a curd that's already made. So go check out that recipe, make it fully. You'll need 1 cup of that recipe to fill your roulade. And cold, it's nice and thick and easy to spread. And so you want to spread it right to the inside where you know you've got that initial curve. I always have like a little extra lemon filling in the center. And I try and leave a little space at the end, just so you don't have lemon curd leaking out at the very bottom of your roulade, or Yule log, or bûche de Noël. It's a roulade if it's not the holiday season. If it's not Christmas, you can call it a roulade. So we've got that beautiful lemon sponge, this tart, tangy lemon curd, and now I'm ready to roll this back up. Of course, not with the tea towel. And you can see how you get no clinginess, no cracking whatsoever. And if you want to make this ahead of time, you can make this, fully assemble it, wrap it, put it in the fridge. And I like to do the meringue the day I like to serve it. So you've got lots of make ahead movements. You can make the sponge ahead, you can make the curd ahead, but now it's time to do the meringue. I do have one that I have let sit, and I want to show you. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. I'm going to have lots of tidying up to do when I'm done. But here is the same sponge, and all I did to make it ready to put the meringue on was trim off the ends, so that way you don't have those little browned edges or uneven sides to it. Those make a lovely snack. Now, if you want to do a traditional Yule log, what you can do is cut the cake on an angle like this, and then you attach that one side like a branch coming out. I don't have a platter that big, so I'm going with just the traditional size. Now, I'll just set that aside because it is time for the meringue. So I'll get everything in place. I do have a fresh whip attachment, and a glass bowl so you can see the volume you get. What we're making is a Swiss meringue. So this means I'm heating my egg whites and sugar together until I reach between 150 and 160 Fahrenheit. That fully cooks the egg whites, and you get such a great volume from them. And I've got my thermometer, 3 egg whites, and my sugar, and no lemon zest here because we don't want the oil interfering with the volume from the eggs. And now I go back to that same water bath, and we're just going to warm up our eggs. So we're not making a 7-minute frosting. You don't have to worry about getting any volume in the pot. The mixer is going to do all the work for you. And it doesn't take long to heat up. I'm just going to make myself a little space here so that you can see the egg whites whipping. coming along nicely. Now you've probably seen me make a Swiss meringue if you've watched my other videos. It's my favorite type of buttercream is a Swiss meringue buttercream where you warm up your egg whites and sugar, and then you whip your meringue in the mixer, and instead of just using it as a meringue, you add softened butter to it, and it makes such a silky smooth buttercream that masks a cake so cleanly, but then also holds the detail if you're doing any piping. So really, I think Swiss meringue is my favorite. Second, if you think I'm gonna say Italian meringue, it's not. I think I love an ermine or a boiled milk buttercream as my second choice. And if I haven't made one yet, I'm gonna look that up. I should share my recipe with you, but it'll have to wait until after the holidays. I've got a full lineup of holiday recipes for you. Okay, we're getting close. I'm at 135. I have to keep an eye on my sponge cake there. Can't forget about the other one in the oven. Oh, we're definitely getting close now. I can just tell. The sugar, when the sugar dissolves, you know you're getting close to temperature. There we go. I've crossed 150. So off the heat and right into my mixing bowl. And we'll get this whipping to a nice stiff peak. I'll be right back, just gonna get rid of my bowl. So where I whipped my cake sponge, my cake meringue to a medium peak, this meringue I want to whip to a stiff peak. And it can take a little more, just a little more whipping. There, I've got great volume and a stiff peak. That meringue is not going anywhere. So it's ready to top on my cake. Just slide my mixer out of the way so I have some elbow room. Oh, I love making a good meringue. I think second only to making bread. Bread has to be one of the more gratifying things to do. Making a really good meringue is so fulfilling. Look at that. That's going to hold that peak no matter what I do with it. But what is key is that you use your meringue right after mixing it. So don't mix this and let it set because it will actually start holding its shape. And so I'm completely covering the sponge. If you wanted a simpler recipe and you wanted to skip the meringue, you could just make the roulade, dust it with icing sugar. And this is such a good sponge recipe that if you wanted to make just a classic Swiss roll with a jam filling, of course, do that. I love when you make my recipes your own, and then they do become your recipes. Take a minute and push some of the meringue. I have enough in my bowl to cover the front. And this does make a generous enough meringue that if you do the branch to make a true Yule log, you have enough meringue to do that little extra real estate. I would love to hear from you and let me know if you'll give this recipe a try. And I'd love to know if you will indeed use this recipe as a bake-along. You're baking with me, following along. If you need a minute to go wash your hands or get rid of dishes, then you hit pause and come back. But this is so you can really see every step of the recipe. Just a little bit up front. I'm also working on a chocolate mandarin bûche de Noël recipe, but that needs a little work. That'll be in time for next Christmas. I'm only in the starting stages with that recipe. All right, I think I've covered all the cake here. Now I'll take a minute and just draw some lines like you see on a tree. And you can give the front and back just a little curve or a swirl. And now the next step is to give it a little browning. So remember, the Swiss meringue is fully cooked. It doesn't need to go into the oven, but using a kitchen torch, we can give it a nice little fireplace browning effect. And this is where those stripes really come through on the top. Look at that. Oh. I don't like to go too heavily on the browning, just a little. We don't want it to look like a s'more. It's lemon meringue after all, a little more elegant. And there we go. Now you can just pop this in the fridge until it's time to serve it. So as I said, I do prefer doing the meringue the day I plan on serving the cake, but you can do it hours and hours ahead. So don't feel you have to do this right before your guests are arriving, especially if you're making this for the holiday season. And once you've got it done, it slices beautifully, and let me show you. Let me get a spatula too to lift it. Ooh, I guess I'm getting the end piece with all the meringue. But this shows you the interior and how lovely it is. And that balance of lemon curd, beautiful lemon sponge cake, and then just the right amount of meringue. In fact, I would say it's better proportion than a lemon meringue pie because all the meringue's on top. Here you have it all around. So with every single bite, oh, you get a lovely taste of meringue. I really hope you give this recipe a try. This is the most intense and longest bake-along I've ever done. So I thank you for joining me, and I really hope you'll give this recipe a try. As all my videos, I include the full recipe below. You'll have to go check out that lemon curd. And now I wish you a happy, happy holiday baking season. Oh yeah. Fluffy, moist. That sponge cake is tender and delicate. Not even a hint of a crack. I know you can make this recipe and you're going to love it. I'll see you again soon for more delicious bake-along recipes. Ooh, I better go check that cake. Phew, it's okay.